Grazie photographer.
Thank you. Thank you to the photographers. Thank you to the cameramen too. We wish to express our thanks to all the journalists present at the press conference to present the business plan of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. The Minister will be introducing the presentation, followed by the management of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, after which we'll have a question and answer session. And as usual, we ask you not only to introduce yourselves with your name and the name of your organization, but also to stay on topic because of the importance which the business plan had. And I'll give the floor to the Minister.
Funziona. Benissimo. Buongiorno. Benvenuti. Veramente due parole.
Good morning. Welcome. I'd like to start from one acknowledgement. The Italian economy is growing. If we look back 12 months, the situation is radically different. But despite this, we need to continue in our policy activity to support it, to make it more robust and to change cyclical growth into solid growth. And it's very important so that we have this business plan which comes at the right time, because it is an instrument of economic policy which fits in with the other measures which have been taken by the government. And furthermore, it has the advantage of really straddling what we need to protect the savings of many Italian savers, and to support and assist public investment. It might seem to be something which is self-evident. I'm not going to get into the details. Claudio Costamagna and Fabio Galli will be doing this better than me, because behind these rather obvious statements which I've just put to you, there is a very complex, comprehensive and thorough strategy which will be described to you. This is something which translates into significant figures in terms of support for the economy, and beyond those numbers, it translates into a significant strategy for the economic policy of Italy. And if I may, I claim that Italy was among the first in bringing into Europe the idea that there should be an active role on the part of national promotion banks. The Cassa Depositi is our example as a forward-looking approach, an example of what the government can do in a market economy which is still weak and has yet to recover from the consequences of the financial crisis. So there is a fundamental strategic role which fits in with the rest of the strategy of the government, and which is part of fits in with the strategy to reduce taxes, to support private investment through the initiatives of finance for growth, and which interacts with what brings in liquidity, and with the structural reforms which make the investment climate more positive and attractive. And I will end here, and I'd like to thank the chairman, the CEO and the board for the work they've done so far, and I wish them the best of success. And it's upon us, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a very good New Year. That's all I have to say. I too would like to start with some thanks, first of all, to the Minister, because not only is he hosting us here today, but also because he's placed his trust in us when we were appointed. I also want to thank our board, which this morning formally approved the plan which we'll be outlining, but it's something which the board's worked on from the start, together with the centres, made significant inputs. We've had a number of formal and informal meetings with the board, and I must say that this is a plan which is the result of common work with them. And my greatest thanks go to our management team, which has worked night and day, particularly over the last week, to try and keep to the deadline of today to adopt this plan. It's a fantastic team, I think, and I myself and Fabio wish to thank them. We also want to thank the top management of the CDP Group, who for the first time have taken part in developing the plan with us. For the first time in the history of the CASA, this is a group plan, not just a CASA plan. So I'd like to thank the companies which are closest to us, which are a full part of the business which CASA wants to develop, such as Siemens Fintech and CDP Immobiliare and Fondo Strategico. And the top management of these companies have taken part in the planning procedure together with us. And finally, I'd like to thank McKinsey, which has supported us throughout this process and gave us a lot of input and informing us of what other national promotional banks in Europe have been doing. And this certainly was a spur for us when we were assessing new ideas and concepts. Two introductory comments before I give the floor to Fabio Gallia, who's going to give you the main outline of the plan. First of all, this is a 5-year plan. Usually in the banking world, 3-year plans are common. We decided to opt for 5 years because one of the main features of the CASA is that it's in the medium-long-term sector. They are become very rare, these type of investors, and so we wanted to stress that we're a patient investor. We invest in the medium and long-term term. Then, as I said, it's a group plan for the first time. And the third remark I'd like to make is to highlight one word which, in my opinion, summarizes the value of the plan, which is promotion. It's inside the definition of National Promotional Bank, and it's also a definition which is given to us in the Stability Law, which Parliament is about to enact. And so it's like Cadevaux in Germany, Caisse de Dépôt in France, and other organizations in Europe. Why is promotion important? Because we believe that our role is to promote investments in our country. And we need to do that increasingly and using PPP instruments. In the 4 pillars, which Fabio will be describing, which are the basic pillars of our plan: public administration, local authorities, public administration, infrastructures, enterprises, and property and real estate. The key is to try and attract capital, which together with us can develop and support the economy. Those who know me, that have been in the financial sector for 30 years, I don't think I've ever seen a time like this, with so much interest in Italian papers on the part of institutional investors, both for infrastructure, real estate, and Italian enterprises. We need to exploit this opportunity and develop instruments which will allow these people to bet on our country. The reforms which have been done have been greatly appreciated. Italy has certainly turned a corner, and we need to take advantage of this. It would be a pity not to take advantage of this. We want to play this the center stage in our plan. I'll stop here and I'll give the floor to Fabio. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and the thanks which Claudio have expressed are also endorsed by myself. For the purposes of transparency, we've prepared some slides, and we can begin with these, and we'll be here to speak of the future. But I think it's important that we look at our roots and our history too. CASA, as was said, CASA's talked about a lot, but often its history and its nature is not well known. It was established 165 years ago, and this building was its second premises after the capital of Italy was moved from Turin to Rome. And there's some founding values it was based on to protect and manage household savings with being involved in works of public utility through financing the state and public agencies. This is something which was become even more important in 2003 privatization. Over the last 12 years, a number of changes have been taken place inside our scope, and recently we also attributed the responsibility for promoting export. So it started for public agencies, and now it is also geared to supporting enterprises. Now, looking at our role, substantially, we manage more than 300 billion household savings, and these are used to fund the state and public administration, enterprises and infrastructures, so the beating heart of our economy, as well as a portfolio of about 30 billion long-term investments, which are stable in important enterprises for the country, and one above all, any. I'll continue also, then we'll also link to what the minister was saying. We're in a different phase compared to the previous 7 years. You know what Italy's experience in this crisis, and initially it was a private debt crisis, then it became public debt crisis. We lost around 10 points. Another way of looking at what happened is to think that the automobile market's gone back to the 70s and the cement market's gone back to the 60s. And yet we're here, and when we look forward, even with all the unknown factors we have before, we believe that we have years of growth in front of us. So the role of CASA has to adapt to a different context. If previously some of the work of organization was dictated by the crisis situation, we now need to activate infrastructures for tomorrow, competitiveness for tomorrow, and also the social economy of tomorrow. And how are we doing this? We'll do this by using our DNA. I think this is a map of the defining elements of CASA. First of all, promotion. Claudio stressed this is important recognition, which means that we have a role of directing the use of European public funds and also structural funds, and therefore allow us to be a key actor in combining public funds with the real economy, public and private funds, in a situation where we have which is increasingly pro-cyclical and short-term. We do need a market operator which can look a bit further beyond the 3-year horizon with a anti-cyclical approach, trying to guide to respond to market failures, step in for market failures. We want to be complementary, not antagonistic to the financial system, bank and the insurance. In fact, we want to catalyze resources which sees our banks and international operators at the institutional level as main counterparts. We have to operate with market based on a market logic, because it's important to maintain the solidity of our business model, and we also need to pay a lot of attention to local situations and situations on the ground, and the issues, social issues and sustainable growth. Here you have a slide which just tries to outline our priorities. We have 4 business pillars in our activity, and there are 3 cross-cutting components which support the structure of our plan, with the aim of mobilizing around 160 billion of CDP resources and to trigger other resources up to about 105 billion. The first 2 pillars represent the history of our institutes supporting public administration and government investment, and to this we add international cooperation, which will start on the 2nd of January. Infrastructure, contributing to a step change for the country. If we manage to interpret our role as a promotional organization, not just a financial intermediary, not just a implementer, we believe that we will be able to contribute to a step change. Enterprises, and here the key term is the life cycle of enterprises. We have a number of tools, equity tools and other tools, guarantees, tools to support Italian companies in the fundamental moments of their life cycle. And finally, a different focus from the past on our real estate area. And in order to do this, we'll need to catalyze resources in Europe and in general in Italy and also worldwide. We need to continue to work to strengthen group governance, provide new skills where they exist, and because we have new challenges before us, and we need to promote a proactive culture. All this maintaining ownership, capital structure, and to guarantee economic sustainability. Resources mobilized 160 billion. You'll see them broken down by area of activity. We've also expressed a multiplier. The multiplier is basically the capability of CASA to activate other resources which can be involved in the projects that will be promoted. These are multipliers which we believe to be prudential. If you make a comparison with other European institutes, we believe that when we mobilize the euro, we have the ambition of multiplying this by at least another 70%, and that explains 275 billion, 65 billion overall. So we'll see how we're mobilizing these resources in the first pillar, as I said, government and public administration. 2 words to give a context to each of these slides. Public administration has changed with the stability law, and there's been a major reduction. We have practically the whole amount of the market for local authorities, and we have to be innovative in this. First of all, we need to support the public agencies in making the best use of their capital and what they own. It's not just property, but it's also their holdings, and this is an important area where the company, and we also, thanks to the role we have and our capabilities, we promote investments in efficiency and help public administration through our consultancy to be more effective in succeeding in promoting investments. Another area which we need to stress is international cooperation. Italy has established a new agency for international cooperation, which is under the responsibility of the government, with an active role of the Foreign Ministry, which has now changed its name as Ministry for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. We will be managing revolving funds. We will have the responsibility of co-managing other resources in favor of this important foreign policy instrument and economic policy instrument directed to developing countries. There are other areas too. For us, the cultural area is also important, and education, where we have a number of initiatives which will be which will give you information in due time. With regard to infrastructures, you know that Italy has a lack of infrastructures, which has built up over the years for a number of reasons. There are objective difficulties. It's easier to find funding for projects than to have projects which actually come to light. So here the step change which we want to bring about is to invest in our capabilities, which are significant for historical reasons, and to improve these so as to become real advisors of public agencies, having a proactive role, not just from a financial standpoint, but also technically, and where it's possible, also from a regulatory standpoint. With the constraints which exist, the other change is to stress public-private partnerships in other companies. Relaunching infrastructure is something which occurred by developing so-called PPPs, and for us this is going to be important. It's going to be one of the main areas of action. And the third thing, which is infrastructure, is access to the capital market. And substantially, the main infrastructures are funded with traditional banking credit channels. Institutional investors, particularly with in a low interest rate situation, are looking for investments papers. Using technical terms, there are not of projects, not of major projects in particular. So from this point of view, examining the various projects which we have available. We need to try to bring these projects to the market more effectively, and not because it's a few days after the Paris summit, but major resources also been dedicated to the environment. The corporate world, this is a rather difficult thing to cover because it's a very broad reality. The key word here is life cycle. We want to help and support our companies from their growth, from their birth to their growth, and further. And we know that there are a number of things to say about the current context. We rank quite low in terms of venture capital, and so we can move on to the next slide, because this curve represents the life cycle of a company.
We want to become the first venture capital operator in Italy. We're already doing that, but figures are quite low. We have the Italian investment funds, and we have pledged 100 million euros. We believe we can do more, and we have started interacting with startups and many firms, and we believe that there is some potential for action there. It is a world that includes family, friends, or angels up until the end of the cycle. We have a new tool, and a major part of these resources will allow us to grow. Now, investment in development. We have to grant more loans to companies, and thanks to the connection with the Juncker plan, we can provide more risk sharing in co-financing with the banks through the development of alternative markets. You know how much Italian entrepreneurs depend on bank credits, on bank loans, and so all this will depend on the investment plan and the strategic investment plan. So we have to follow the whole life cycle. We have just come out of a very difficult crisis, but there are companies that are still facing difficulties because they've not been able to deal with the changes. There is not a major operator, but we want to play the role of anchor investor to promote this tool that may be useful to the country, that will allow us to make interesting returns. Now, let's move on to the world of equity, and let's consider the focus on the strategic fund. You know that these are the main shareholdings, and if we want to consider the future of the fund, we should look at the central column and the column on the left with the long-term equity. The fund will basically be divided into two sections: stable shareholdings, i.e. companies that are important for the whole system because of their size or the contribution they make to the development of the country. Then in January, Saipem and SIA and Ansaldo Energia. In the future, the portfolio will include other stable shareholdings, including first and foremost Eni. So these are long-term shareholdings. The Italian Strategic Fund also includes a number of listed companies, and maybe companies that will be listed in the future. Everything will be managed with a view to optimization. These are companies that are already part of the fund and will be managed by the same team that has managed the investment fund. In the future, we want to create an asset management company, and soon the authorization to this effect will be initiated. Our goal is to be a catalyst for resources in Italy and abroad to be able to achieve an investment equal to 2 billion euros. And this new company, this new body will interact with companies that are creating new needs, that have new needs in terms of management. The current fund will be able to invest, and we should be interpreting this on the basis of a focus that we have on capital markets. I believe we have to consider this. Stock exchange capitalization is less than 1/3, and less than 1/3 of listed companies are industrial companies. So we believe that a number of structural changes are inducing entrepreneurs to reason along different lines, adopting a longer term perspective. And we believe the FSI, due to its skills and its ability, may be a partner for our investors and support them. So we will start a fund number 1 in 2016, and the more companies are able to grow and become more entrepreneurial, the better it will be in terms of innovation, R&D, and development and growth for the country. Now, let's move on to internationalization. We have first the birth of a company and then its listing, but then a company has to expand internationally. Now, we have supported exports. SACE, Siemens, and CDP have done a lot, but we believe that a lot more can be done. And this is why we thought of a different organization. First of all, we have to create a home, an internationalization, single point of access within SACE. This will be done to enable access as well as education for our customers. We want to avoid any overlap and be complementary to the banking sector. We want to be close to medium-sized firms. Sometimes large groups find it difficult to understand what we do and what CIME does, and we have to strengthen our commitment towards these businesses. Full support. We are working with the Treasury officials to ensure that our model will evolve along the lines of similar entities existing in France and Germany, because we believe we can make an important and significant contribution to Italian exports. And now we come to real estate. The figure here is smaller, but it signals that our commitment has grown bigger. First of all, we have to increase the value and make the most of state property, rely or support social housing, especially with a contribution of foundations. We want to ensure innovation, and we believe that the real estate world is undergoing a major change. These things will take time to evolve, but we want to be more effective than in the past. We have to invest in social housing and not just affordable housing. So from this point of view, we are going to play a major role within the community. Innovative projects, I believe that first we have to make them and then announce them, but we have a few indicators and guidelines. There is not enough room for co-working, and sometimes it is difficult to find the space to get together and work. I believe that making the most of state property entails considering the different actors. We have to support those institutions where trades are being taught. We have to bridge the gap that still exists with other industrialized countries. Cities are also undergoing major changes, not just in Italy, but in Europe as well. And we also made the example or we talked about the construction of new prisons. We believe that tourism is a major asset as well. More can be done, and we can provide support through private equity and venture capital funds. We already mentioned something in relation to ports and airports, but this is a much wider area. Here we find the word Mezzogiorno. There's a strong focus on the needs of southern Italy because this is a key area for the growth of our country, and we believe we should contribute to reducing the gap with the rest of the country. So these are our 4 pillars. We mentioned some cross-cutting elements, horizontal elements that cut across the plan. Now, Europe does not simply mean Juncker or structural funds. We have to strengthen our presence in Europe. Our French and German partners are much more present and are much more effective. So we should continue discussing our plan with European counterparts. I believe we will be able to convince Juncker to consider Italy's proposals. We have to be effective on this front. We also mentioned the financial system and not just international investors. This is done in cooperation with the banking system. Let's talk about local authorities and local communities. We are the only national promotion institute that has a single headquarters. We believe our network has to be extended with an eye for investment and cost containment, but we also should be able to facilitate interaction and dialogue. This is something we experienced with some mayors of small towns that had to come to Rome for 1 or 2 days. In addition to this, we have to increase synergies with SACE, and we will try to set up offices, local offices. One final point is governance. I believe we should increase our leadership ability to guide. This is a group plan. All the companies of the group have contributed to it. We have heard the opinions of entrepreneurs. We have created a number of activities to strengthen our role. Now we should consider culture. Culture should entail a plan for achieving the objectives we have set ourselves. If we can truly implement our promotion role. And of course, we have to somehow take action on culture. I believe we have some time for Q&A, so could you please identify yourself and state the name of the paper or channel you work for? Franco Locatelli, head of the First Online site. I could not understand, or I did not hear any reference being made to the ultra broadband, and yet the Prime Minister continues to tell us that this is an absolute priority for it. Secondly, we should not forget that the state, or through CDP, the state deals with telecommunications through Lanuco, for example. I would like to know what your intentions are as far as the ultra broadband plan is concerned. Well, that is infrastructure. We did not mention any specific infrastructure, and ultra broadband is something we will work on, and we will try to do our best. As far as telecom is concerned, we have to ensure that being the investor, we have to ensure that this infrastructure is set up as quickly as possible. And so we have to also ensure that we have a shareholding in Metroweb, because it is the only company that has ensured a optic fiber infrastructure. This is why we have been interacting with all operators, Wind, Vodafone, etc., to understand how we can provide the skills of this company and ensure the necessary investment, the necessary funds for the investment. Next question. Finanza Down Jones, Udo Guidi. I wanted to ask the CDP managers if, as part of this strategy to develop the ultra broadband, Metroweb may become a part of telecom. It is an important security. And I would also like to ask Minister Padoan, this is an excellent opportunity because I don't often have the opportunity to ask him a question. Considering that the Treasury has gone down to 64.7%, now who will take care of the 800 million deficit of the pension fund?
What we're doing with Telecom Metro, we're working on a business plan to see whether there's any, whether it's worthwhile working together on infrastructure covering around 250 Italian municipalities. That's what we're doing with Telecom. The technicians are working on the business plan. We haven't seen the final results, but apparently they're very positive. If we were to approve the business plan for Telecom and Metro Web, we would sit around the table with Telecom to see how we can work together on this thing, which might involve work on the capital structure or not. And it's the same thing we're doing with Vodafone and Wind on a much smaller group of cities, and with Enel. With regard to C and D zones, which are the less populated areas of Italy, where there are a number of public funds available in order to bring ultra broadband there. And I have no other comments on other points. With the fact that the government's gone down 64.5%, I don't actually see a correlation between the fact that the government 64.5 means that it still has solid control over Poste. I don't think that in the overall view of the government, I don't see how this can change general management. I think it's something which is very specific, and I'll leave that to the company, in which we have utmost confidence. There's any correlation between the reduction of the share and the management problem of something.
Va bene, di qua e poi dall'altra parte. Prego.
Buongiorno Giorgio.
Good morning, Giorgio. It's Sky TG24. Minister, after the season of ERI, we're going to have a new important page of state involvement in the economy. We'll take a whole program to deal with that. Perhaps your channel can organize one. In any case, I like the approach you're suggesting. It is another new phase now, independently of history, which is always important. Claudio Costamagno, Fabio Galli has already said this. Italy is in a new phase. It's in a phase which I consider to be very, very positive. There's a new phase in which the state, with state-of-the-art techniques, and cooperates with the private sector in order to grow the economy. And so it's just a historical coincidence what you're mentioning, but I do really stress that with Cassa Depositi we have new instruments which are based on the exploitation of market mechanisms which serve the interests of the company.
Giuseppe Fonte, Reuters. Dottor
Fonte from Reuters. Dr. Costamagno. So you don't exclude taking a share in Telecom Capital through MetroWeb. To the Minister of the Economy, is the government concerned about what's happened in the share structure of Telecom, where we have the two biggest French holders which have increased? And before answering, I just want to make a comment which I've often made since I've taken up this position. I unfortunately for you, come from a world where first you do things and then they're announced and then you comment on them. Unfortunately here often first you comment and then perhaps you announce things, but then they're never done. So this is the answer to your question about Telecom. I thought I'd already answered. I noticed that we continue to have questions which have nothing to do with the business plan of Cassa Depositi. I can just say that Telecom is a private company and the government is respectful of the decisions which are not directly under its responsibility. Grazie, I'd like to ask you, Cassa has an important part of its profit from the reduction of the payments of the current accounts and the profits also of the treasury dividend. So are you considering increasing the amount and the low cap for the PASCI ends at in December? Is the government going to sell immediately, or is it going to wait for different conditions? Now, second question, you excluded yourself. So the first question is something which derives from low interest rates, which will probably continue to be low for a while. Government here has a conflict of interest with itself in the in the narrow sense of interest, if I can use this very bad joke. On the one hand, there's the issue of the treasury account, and looking at the interest, this does raise problems for Cassa and the government. Then there are low interest on the debt, which solves the problem of the government. We're working on this. We have to find new ways of coexisting in this situation of low rates, and we're sitting on the table to see how to solve this.
Giovanni Rossi, Quotidiano Nazionale. Ministro, con questo piano...
Minister, with this plan, Italy has it turned a corner? Italy is picking up speed, I think, with this plan, because we do have instruments which are now being deployed, and I mentioned them before. In particular, there's a better way of exploiting market potential with activity which starts from the public and then interacts with the private sector. Giovanna Consoli, Repubblica. You said in your presentation that you're mobilizing 160 billion overall, and you stressed a more positive figure compared to the previous one. I think it's 50 billion more compared with the previous management, more or less. Perhaps you can confirm this. These 50 billion extra mobilized by the Cassa, where does this come from? Where are you getting this from? Because the minister was saying the accounts, profitability of the Cassa's accounts is affected by a dwindling dividends because of the low interest rates. The capital, which has been reduced and doubled over 5 years, I'm wondering how you can incentivize this. You have to pay dividends. All these extra resources, where do they come from? And how your account's going to respond over the next 5 years? We've made a comparison with the we're in a very completely different economic context. That has to be borne in mind. We're a national promotional institute, which allows us not only to make better use of European funds, the Juncker Plan funds, but we'll not only be making use of these funds, but having these funds also means that we can use them in order to implement projects. Thirdly, the focus is on public administration and infrastructures. There's a major acceleration on the corporate world. The corporate world is also considering this reorganization, which we're looking for in the next 5 years. And this will allow us to have a greater impact on the export sector. And we've also thought in next few years to develop our current model, which is a unique model in Europe, to a more French style and German style model. So this is a basic assumption. We already started this process, and we believe that this is something which will show its results, considering that the resources mobilized are a blend of credits, guarantees and equity. What needs to be stressed, and I thank you for your question, is that there's no change in the risk profile. That's very important to stress. The mix of instruments will be different than in the past. If there are some regulatory changes which will come, and we think that it's reasonable to expect that there will be in the next few years, there will be an impact, maintaining the solidity of our business model in a period which in our horizon is something which we consider to be characterized by low rates, and towards the end of the plan period we think there'll be higher rates. In any case, profitability is satisfactory, and we see it progressively increasing. This is with consistency not only in our operating results but also in our capital.
Luisa Leone, Milano Finanza.
I'd like to ask the Minister, as part of your projects to try and do away with the amount of non-performing loans, Cassa Deposito e Prestiti, can it have a role? And if so, which one? And does your plan allow you to intervene? I was wondering when this question was going to come up. No. It's your. I was expecting it earlier, so I'm just saying. Well, congratulating you on bad banks. I'll repeat what I'm saying. The government's already introduced measures. I'm referring to DTAs and the bankruptcy procedures, which facilitate a return to a more normal status in the bank's accounts. We're working on mechanisms which allow the introduction of market guarantee instruments which can facilitate demand and supply meeting over NPLs. Full stop. So if you can hand the microphone. Lorenzo Zottero from Bloomberg.
E poi lo facciamo arrivare qui davanti. Raccolgo l'invito a restare sull'oggetto della conferenza.
You've asked us to keep to the topic of the meeting. On the slide which you showed us, Mr. Gallia, which we don't have on paper, there was a box to the left with written long-term equities, if I remember properly, in your portfolio. Yeah, there we are. Metroweb's there, long-term. So we should assume that that will remain a subsidiary of yours in the long term. This box. So you keep on going back to Metroweb. I see this box is aims at being management of stable holdings from 2003. Since we got examples, got Snam, Terna. And so here, we've broken down the current portfolio in among what we consider to be stable investments for us, and those are being placed here. We've got alongside Metro, we got Saipem, which and this should something that should come in by early next year, and Southern Energy and SIA. And so our goal, I think, is clear. We want to contribute to this plan for essential infrastructure. It's even more important than certain material infrastructures. Make a contribution to implementing this plan and really make use of the potential we have. We haven't spoken this previously. We haven't mentioned any individual projects, but when we spoke of physical and digital infrastructures, digital was this. If there'll be investments, we'll be willing to finance them because this is our role in the world of infrastructure. Can I, if I could just add that Metroweb today has a 56 F2I holding, 54% F2I, and 46% focus strategic on. So this is a 46% holding. It's not all Metroweb. That's our part. FSE is something else. The question is different. Unfortunately, we don't have the microphone. When we say it's stable, we want to keep it stable. Otherwise, we put it on the right-hand portfolio. Definitely. If I haven't been clear enough, I apologize for that. It's stable. Stable. as I said previously, for other companies which we've had for 10 years. We consider this stable. Strategic can be interpreted in various ways. We consider this to be long-term, stable investment. Hello, Cesca Dominelli, Sole 24 Ore. Two very quick questions. First one to Mr. Gallia. During your presentation, you said that you'll be working on better impact on the Fondo Italiano di Investimenti. So what time frame do you envisage in increasing your share in Fondo? Second question, Mr. Costamagna. Among the activities in this life cycle, you're speaking of turnaround companies, something which has been discussed for a long time, I think, which is has difficulty in coming to light. When can we expect practical measures? Because so far it's been invoked as a solution of many problems, but we haven't really seen it in action. Now, with regard to the first question, we intend to increase our capital in Fondo Italiano Investimenti. We have 1250 now, and we're willing to increase our share, buying up the shares of people who want to sell. So far, we invested 600 million in this fund. It's carried out its work very well in recent years, and since we also got to invest other capital, we wanted to have a more say in what it does. Yes, turnaround is something which has been difficult in coming to light. It's a situation we found ourselves in. We're trying to solve this situation where made a lot of progress, and we hope by the end of January we can set up the company with the management, which we've identified, and the board. Even though we can't announce it, we got chairman and CEO already selected, and other investors alongside CAS, institutional investors, which will be involved in the startup capital. Once the company's been established with these few initial investors, it will be up to the management to raise further funds. But with that startup capital, they'll be ready to look at potential operations. So while we're checking to see whether there's a final question, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the 400 journalists and others who are not physically present, but who are following the live web stream in English and Italian. So there's another question, Ponce, and then we'll go down at the back. Sorry if I return to the issue of profitability, because this is an issue which you spoke about during the renewal of the positions with your foundations. In 2009, 2014, I'm quoting the Bassanini report of Bassanini when he left, the Cassa had a performance on capital which was 20%, 21% on average yearly, ROI yearly. And so you think you can maintain this very good ROI, which will be for the foundation in future years, or not? You're not listed, but the business plan should indicate some clear figures. As you know, we'll know that in a few years' time when we see the figures. But apart from any jokes, we'll be disclosing the figures as they are produced. What I think we need to say is we have a different situation in terms of rates. In profitability of recent years were also the result of extraordinary actions which generate a lot of capital gains. We intend to get to a higher level at the end of this period compared with the very low levels we've had, and probably which we'll have in this year and next year, and to bring it more in line with past returns. There's no capital gains, no extraordinary selling of equity, and no capital gains linked to bond portfolio holdings. And so the effect of our profitability are based on our management activities and the initiatives which we develop. That's all I can say. I don't believe that. I think it's important to look at Cassa not just from the shareholders' eyes. Since we came in, we have certainly attached importance to the role of shareholders, but I think the role goes beyond that. So it's not just shareholders, but stakeholders. If we were to reason like a private entity, wouldn't be a long-term entity, wouldn't be in some areas where there are certain market limits, but we believe this is a fundamental role for our institution, and this is something which we want to combine with good profitability and having good capital in future years.
Buonasera, sono Ravoni del...
Il Giornale. A first question on real estate, Invimid and other companies owned by the state, and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. How do you think you will succeed after so many failures? And then there's a second part to my question. Now, with regard to subordinate bondholders, a problem that the government is trying to fix now. What can be done to support this class of savers? Cassa Depositi e Prestiti is already playing an important role with regard to social housing and increasing or optimizing the real estate assets it has. And then we will do so more effectively than in the past. We shall continue our work through a number of actions. I don't think that Cassa Depositi e Prestiti had failures in the past. I believe that now we can make a contribution from the point of view of optimization of real assets and in the sector of tourism as well. And so we will be working along these lines. The second question is really not relevant to the business plan, so thank you.